This is a motorcycle, just like the title says. This is a cross, and this is the Star of David, and this is Barney the dinosaur. It's not really relevant, I just wanted to make sure you're paying attention. But back to the point, this is the same motorcycle, and this is another motorcycle. Some of you believe these are the same category of motorcycle, despite the immense reality you're choosing to ignore. And this is my bike, that a lot of you seem to think is a sport tour, despite an intense amount of evidence that it is in many cases a superior ADV bike, but I've already proved that in a previous video. Back to the former, Abrahamic religions have been not getting along very well for pretty much ever since there were two, and then three. The first one spent a lot of time killing pretty much everyone and cutting the tips off their dicks because they were told to by someone. And then a new dude showed up creating the second group, but the first group didn't like the dude. And then a couple hundred years later, some people who weren't there wrote a book about it. And that book was narrowed down by a bunch of other people that weren't there. But because of that, a bunch of people, especially in America, who haven't even read the new book, but have been told that it's true by people who also didn't read it, are now really not cool with each other. Now, why am I over-summarizing religious jargon to ostracize pretty much my entire audience? Well, that's because no matter how much you try to crucify me in the comments, there is no Church of CRF. There is no Synagogue of XL, and there is no Mosque of Tenere. Though, actually, the Tenere is named after an African desert, so there very well may actually be a Tenere mosque. So, actually, maybe that's why some of you are so religiously defensive of the Tenere. Are we talking about the same Tenere? Well, assuming we are both talking about a T7, why has something so casual, a claim to freedom, become such a controversial and aggressive topic? And feel free to look through the comments on my last video. I'm not the only one feeling this way about the online motorcycle, quote, community. But why have bikes, especially this bike, become subject to religious-like followings, where a disagreement seems to have become similar to that of a Middle East Abrahamic diplomacy? Well, a big part has been that pro riders have been paid huge sums of money to convince you that the T7 is not what it is, an ADV bike and rather top heavy. And due to that, smaller influencers who want to seem like they know what they're doing and convince everyone that they're on the right track to get clout themselves before actually becoming a pro rider, try to make the exact same points. That's why everyone says brakes feel wooden, and about 10% of those people can actually explain to me what they actually mean. I blame the British. But also, it's ad revenue, because on YouTube, you can post two videos that get the same amount of watch time and the same amount of views, but one is about a BMW and the other is about how to buy a used bike smartly. But the BMW video is likely going to have more people with more money that they're willing to spend, so the ad value will be much higher. I've recently posted two videos, one with almost twice the watch time and noticeably more views, but the first has made $23 while the second has made only $18. So in the attempt to push a controversial video, I get more views. And if it is more sellable and more addictive, I get better ad revenue, which explains why so many people are trying to convince you not to buy a dual sport when you should, and to get a very expensive ADV bike that needs even more expensive gear and mods. And then, of course, we have the algorithm that targets and radicalizes you with niche content that you feel makes you the majority, all while forgetting that most content creators, like me, only do this because they are completely useless in a real job. And you know we're not really that good at motorcycles either. Otherwise, we'd be sponsored by pro racing teams, wouldn't we? But in fact, in criticism of the algorithm targeting issues, a study found that new neo-Nazis in Germany were radicalized on Facebook through targeted algorithms trying to sell more ads. And I'm sorry to say, YouTube isn't much different. And saying that, you already know that this video won't be very profitable. So if you can, and if you like it, check out my Patreon linked in the description to help me avoid for-profit radicalized clickbait. If not, no dramas, here's a BMW you definitely need to buy. But attempting to stay on topic, it's also incredibly fair to blame the United States. At no surprise to any of you, the U.S. political and social climate has moved to extremes, with not much level heads weighing up the middle. What many of you may not know is that the majority of YouTube content production and consumption is in the USA. So, surprise, surprise, you get extreme views on your motorcycle content as well. That also kind of makes sense why people hate on the Honda Transalp so much. The 90 horsepower Wonder Bike gets slashed down to the Touareg 80 horsepower, and Americans go crazy. Oh, and by the way, an important note. Notice how I did not say all Americans, just like I did not say all religious people. But in the same, over 90% of the meanest comments I get are from the United States, and 100% of the people encouraging me to opt out of life come from the United States. But only 20% of the views are out of the US. Go figure. Now, for the 5% of you still watching and the 2% not so offended as to miss the point altogether, these are motorcycles, or as your dad called them, freedom machines. And as your cool uncle with no kids says, run what you brung. In modern terms, ride your own ride. And as I keep saying, that means letting everyone else ride their own ride, even if it's not your personally approved ride. So please, stop making bikes religious. Just because you ride one bike on-road and have a good time, and I ride a different bike off-road and have a good time, that has no effect on what you ride and how you ride. It's okay to disagree, and moreover, it's really not a religion. It's a for-profit industry that you and I make no profit from. So why are we religiously defending a bike to be an unpaid sales rep rather than just be happy that there are more bikers out there trying it out in whatever way makes them comfortable and, more importantly, happy? So in summation, no, we don't have to ride the same bike to ride together. No, you're not better than car people, even though actually, yes, we absolutely are. No, it's not okay for you to hate on people just because they enjoy riding on streets where you are too afraid to push the limits. Yes, the Transalp is in fact a better sport tourer than a T7, but no, it's not a street bike, and it's actually nearly as good off-road. And finally, yes, George Carlin was right. When you think about how dumb the average person is, half the people are dumber than that. That's just because that's good math. But studies have shown that below average IQs massively overestimate their intelligence by being too dumb to understand how much they don't actually understand. And inversely, an above average IQ understands exactly how much they don't know and believes they are actually a below average intelligence, generally keeping quiet and to themselves. So maybe just let everyone ride their own ride without getting offended that it's not the same ride on the same bike as you deem superior. And as my dad told me growing up, better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool rather than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Except for me, because I'm a social media influencer and I have to use my stupidity to its premium, or I won't get paid. So here's a link to my Patreon, a subscribe button, and a video the algorithm wants to target you with to keep you watching. Bye-bye, and ride safe.